So we could start anywhere. So who would like to kick off with? Yes, I have.
Thanks, Ken. Adrian Piani from AECOM. As a company, we've been quite vocal on the use of value capture to fund infrastructure. So, and I think many treasuries don't like the idea, but what's your feel on value capture as an alternative financing mechanism?
I think it's going to be part of the financing mechanisms that we deploy. One of the questions that I've been struggling with in recent times is, and this is a broad question, but your question is a specific example of it. It's this question: how much of what Australian business thinks needs to be done in the Australian economy to build stronger communities, a stronger nation, and of course to enhance the profitability of their own businesses? How much of that can we do ourselves, in not necessarily working alone, but working with other businesses? At what point do we have to go to the government and get the government to do something? And this is a question that can be asked in a lot of areas of commercial activity, by the way. Infrastructure generally, not every infrastructure need can be met that way, but many can. And there are some very interesting infrastructure projects that have been delivered in Australia that have had very little government, well, actually no government support and very little government involvement. And some of those have involved value capture. And what about energy? To what extent could the Australian energy sector deliver the certainty that it wants without involving government at all? It sounds like a crazy sort of question to ask, because we've always thought that the government wrote the rules and we'd have to rely on government to write the rules. But I would say that it's such a shambles that business should be asking itself the question, to what extent can we do this ourselves?
Yes, I have a question over, and they're ignoring me.
Dr. Henry, thank you for an insightful and somewhat blunt assessment. Craig Pandy from the Nous Group here in Canberra. One of the issues that you raised in your speech was that of population growth and where we would cram the other 9 million people. And once again, we hear about...
I didn't say cram, actually. Because No, I said the 7 million I think are going to be crammed into Sydney and Melbourne. I get that bit. Well, I don't actually know where the other 9 million are going to be, but I do not imagine they're going to be crammed, the other 9 million. I don't imagine that.
Often when the topic is raised, regional development gets waived as the potential answer.
Yeah.
The question I'm really interested in, I think a number of your other listeners are as well, is what is necessary in order to make our regions viable and sustainable?
Yeah.
And infrastructure obviously is something that people point to, but really infrastructure needs to be a road to somewhere. So what needs to be done to make industry in regional areas viable and sustainable? All
right. So I think, look, I don't have anything like the complete answers to this question, but obviously I've been doing a bit of thinking about it. So yes, obviously infrastructure is part of what's going to be required to make certain regional centres work. But I would start with the observation that the other 9 million Australians, we're going to have them. They're going to be here around about mid-century, and they are going to be, many of them, living in regional Australia. And the question is not really whether they're going to be living there. The question is what sort of quality of lives are they going to have, right? Now, some regions think about this, and they think about it quite a lot. Recently, I've moved back to essentially the place where I grew up. And there's a town not far away from where I grew up that we used to go on school excursions, really to play sport, to do over these people in this rather quaint, backward-looking seaside settlement. And we used to ask it. It was a very attractive place, lovely beaches, and we'd have conversations like this. Gee, this would be a fantastic place to live. And the response was always, yeah, but there are no jobs. So this was a small town of a few thousand people, and the town that I was living in had 16,000 people at the time. I've gone back to live in that area. The town that I was living in with 16,000, today 40 years later has 18,000. And the little backwood town, one we thought was backward, now has a population of 45,000. There were no jobs 40 years ago, that's what we believed. It has no manufacturing sector. It doesn't process or extract minerals or timber or anything like that. It's a service town. And it's a very vibrant service town, and it's one of the fastest growing regional centres in New South Wales. So it's possible. And that, I don't want to go through the details of that one because pretty soon somebody's going to figure out where it is if you haven't already. But the thing is this, people understood and they took a genuine interest in the answer to your question. And it wasn't just government, it wasn't just local government taking an interest in that. Yes, state government took an interest in it, but more fundamentally, business took an interest in it. They saw the business opportunities. They had to get involved, sleeves rolled up, in building a community in which the people that they wanted to work for them would want to live. That was it. How do we get people that we want to work for us to live here? Because we're committed to that region. A lot more businesses are going to be asking themselves that question over the decades ahead. My hope is that they ask the question sufficiently early.
Thank you. Yes.
Dr. Henry, Sean Rooney from Leading Age Services Australia. Thanks very much for your presentation. And on the population theme, I'd like to extend that to considering demography and the ageing population. And I'd be very keen to get your views on Australia's preparedness to deal with the number of people that is basically the new normal of people over the age of 65. And also, I guess your view on how to reimagine their contribution to the economy rather than seen as a drain on the economy, but actually contributors. So I welcome your thoughts.
Yeah. So we first started doing some work on this inside the federal government in 2002. We published the first intergenerational report in 2002, another one in 2007, 2010. There was another one in 2015, and all of these intergenerational reports have drawn attention to the issue that you raise, stressing actually that on quite almost immutable population parameters, the Australian population was ageing, and was ageing actually quite dramatically. And then raising the question, where do we think these people are going to live? What sort of services are going to be required? Do we have the systems for the planning of social infrastructure that's going to be required? We raise these questions. And one of the reasons I'm so frustrated today, and one of the reasons why I have spoken so bluntly today, is because I do not feel we've made any progress at all in the past 15 years. And that, frankly, is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. Why have intergenerational reports? Why do all this work? Why publish this stuff if you're not going to do anything with it? But that's my sense of it. I think it is quite frustrating. How well prepared are we? Basically, we've left it up to local government. Basically. State government certainly taking an interest, but basically I think the questions have been left up to local government. And I'd say to you, as good as some local governments are, they're not equipped to deal with questions of this enormity.
Yes, I'm just trying to sweep around, but yes, you're close enough to a sweep. Yes.
Thank you. Jenny Corbett from the Australian National University. Dr. Henry, you used the language of the Asian century. That language has more or less disappeared from political discourse over the last few years. And I think you could argue that in the current political climate, particularly with what is happening in the United States, a focus and engagement with Asia becomes even more critical for Australia than it was when the Asian white paper came out. What can business do to re-engage, to raise the awareness, and what is it doing?
Yeah. So the thing is that business is doing a lot. That's the thing. And so, NAB, for example, we've got branches in Beijing, we've got a branch in Shanghai, we've got branches, a number throughout Southeast Asia. We've got one in Hong Kong as well. That's just NAB. As you know, ANZ has a bigger physical footprint in Asia. All the other banks, major banks, are there. Other businesses are there. NAB's the biggest business bank in the country, and we bank 1/3 of Australia's farmers, and so we have a particular window through which we can observe, and not just observe, but participate in the engagement of Australian business with Asia, and it is growing very rapidly. And there is a lot of interest from our business customers in doing more business in Asia because they do see it as a centre of opportunity. And they're somewhat mystified by the lack of interest that the political leadership is showing in the topic. Mystified, as am I, obviously. It does seem as if we don't want to talk about what is surely the biggest opportunity for this country in so many dimensions, commercial dimensions, but also cultural and social dimensions and so on. Biggest opportunity, surely, that this country is going to have this century. Well, maybe business, could be and should be talking more openly about the opportunities that they are discovering and the great success that they're having as individual businesses in building business operations in Asia. We could be, as businesses, telling a much more positive story about the opportunities of this century.
It's interesting that your comment about trench warfare with our political class isn't making some of this easier either, is it? Because
No.
I remember there was a health minister who I had a huge regard for in one of the states who was hugely criticised because she actually took a significant delegation of health industry people to China and the region, and she was attacked for doing that, which is...
Actually, Paul, I was saying to some people last night, if you've got a bright policy idea, the worst thing you can do with it is convince a politician that it's a good idea. It'll be dead within 24 hours. That's how bad things have got.
Not in the ACT, of course. But, we have a minister here who we have to be careful with, yes. I'm told I'm out of time, so I'll be obedient. But thank you very much, and thank you for coming, thank you for being part of it, and thank you, all of you, for all the organisers and so on. There's one small tribute I'd like to make because our CEO, Stephen Martin, is retiring from the head of CEDA in a few weeks. You would know, because he's run so many things over the years that he's been here, CEDA is an immensely stronger organisation, as Lee and the team would attest from Stephen's leadership. Shows you that old polys can in fact be recycled effectively, occasionally, but I know that you would like to also note that Stephen is going off to do something else exciting, and it's appropriate for me to pay tribute to his contribution. But apart from that, could you please join me in thanking Ken for a remarkable address.